It happened again. We got something nice and Jagex took it away. Well, so it seems. After the Combat Modernization update, or EOC2 as many have called it, we saw a whole host of nerfs across the board the following week. From melee and magic damage nerfs to drop rate nerfs in the Sanctum of Rebirth. With this happening, one question has been coming up over and over again within the community. Why run multiple combat betas to test these combat changes to then still not get it right when they release it? Because, let's be honest here, it does feel really bad when you've tasted the forbidden fruit of the shiny new combat improvements for Jagex to then nerf it the next week. I do think I have an answer for the question regarding the beta, and you're probably not gonna like it, but in fact, I do think there's a deeper issue hidden underneath, and that is why these nerfs in particular feel so bad in the first place. What you will like, however, is clicking the like button. Well, I will like that. Subscribe if you're new, as we're still trying to get to 15k subscribers by the end of the year. And enough yapping, my name's Chevalric, and let's talk about nerfs in Runescape. It's probably a good idea to start off with what exactly happened before we dive a little bit deeper into the idea of nerfing content. In the background of the video, you can see a whole host of changes made to mainly magic and melee that nerf the damage, or well, also known as the DPS output of these two styles, which mainly affects endgame when it comes to magic. And regarding melee, at first glance, they might seem like huge nerfs across the board, especially if you didn't pay attention in mass class, but in reality, there might be a little bit more going on. Let's take the melee ability changes for example. I've seen a lot of people saying that there are 30% nerfs to certain abilities. Yeah, sure. Overpower had its average damage reduced from 340 to 310% when using the Zuck Cape. That is a 30% reduction in ability damage, not a 30% nerf. In reality, that's only a 9% nerf. The healing capabilities of melee have also been nerfed, in some cases even by more than 50%. To add some context on how powerful melee was after the initial combat modernization update, some people were able to do some of the Grandmaster speed killing times or other combat achievements with melee using Revolution. Whilst I think Revolution should be a viable playstyle, you should absolutely not be able to not have to press abilities to get some of the hardest combat achievements in the game. When it comes to magic, the tier 95 Fracture Staff Armadale had its damage and critical damage bonus reduced by 20 and 11% respectively, where the tier 95 Magic Robes saw a 30% nerf to its set effect crit bonus and a 13% nerf to the Asphyxiate ability when using the tier 95 armor set. So is this a nerf across the board as many seem to claim regarding magic? No. This just means that the top end of players who were using the absolute best in slot gear were affected by these changes. So what happened here is that when the combat changes went live, these styles were a bit overtuned, especially the end game with best in slot gear, and Jagex felt it to be necessary to nerf them for the long-term health of the game. I would also like to clarify that these changes are probably felt a lot less, if at all, in the early to mid game. Especially the magic ones, as they pretty much only apply to endgame weapons / armors, which is actually great, as the biggest goal of the Combat Modernization update was to create a better progression system throughout the other combat styles, and that hasn't really been affected by these changes. But why do these nerfs still feel so bad to the people it does actually apply to? While they aren't as bad as some people make them out to be, we can also not deny that some of the aspects of melee, like the healing or some of the damage output, or the tier 95 armors as weapons for magic, weren't actually hit at all, because they weren't. However, I'd argue that it is for a good reason. While some people might state that Jagex just doesn't want us to have fun, at the end of the day, their jobs is to create an enjoyable game that will make the company money in the long term, and that comes with making unpopular decisions like nerfs to create a more sustainable, healthier video game for the long term. Game balancing is a very fine balance between creating something worthwhile for the player to interact with right now and long-term vision. Sure, you can create a very powerful, fun weapon, armor ability right in this moment that sits at the tippity top of the meta, something that will make some harder bosses a bit easier and eventually will be needed for the next new most difficult boss in the game. Yet, if it's too powerful, that also introduces power creep, which is the gradual devaluation of older content as the devs consistently release new, stronger items. This aspect of gaming, the balancing of it, is something the average player isn't really concerned by. And why should we be? Everyone who logged in when the update went live got something really fun to play around with, and now it's less fun. I mean, you might have even been grinding out some new melee upgrades over the last week to truly make use of these changes, and then you find out it's getting nerfed the next week. Even though it's still good, it can still be demotivating and make it feel like Jagex just doesn't like you and you feel like you're wasting your time or something. Yet we also shouldn't forget that one of the most important reasons why we got these changes in the first place, besides obviously improving the early and mid game, is because when necromancy released, all the other styles were gutted because necro was so incredibly strong, easy to obtain, and also had amazing sustain with the ghost. So if the newly changed melee or magic combat styles are posing a similar issue and are too strong in Jagex's eyes, then they should be nerfed sooner rather than later, however much it might suck. What makes these nerfs probably feel even worse is them making it to social media, because this is something that kind of always happens and ties in what I said earlier. People don't understand simple maths or just the numbers in general behind a nerf and start doom posting on socials, which obviously gets a lot of upvotes, and people who are less informed on the matter take it as truth, which continues this narrative and kind of creates a bit of a vicious cycle. It's something I have been guilty of myself as well, opening socials, seeing everyone meltdown and thinking, Jagex must have had an oopsie again. Why this is actually relevant to bring up is because community sentiment is a very important aspect of a live service game like RuneScape, because if people are happy with the game, your enjoyment is most likely to go up as well. A great example of this is the road to restoration, the roadmap, and the removal of Treasure Hunter. None of these changes truly have affected me and my playstyle on a day-to-day basis, besides these combat changes of course, but even before those, my motivation was through the roof due to all the excitement surrounding the game and its future. So whilst community sentiment might be a more vague piece of the puzzle to these nerfs feeling so bad, it's definitely an important one. Just like the puzzle piece of why Jagex is running betas in the first place to then not get the balancing right. Well, the reason for this is quite simple. No matter how many betas you run, you will never be able to get it right. The majority of people who interact with betas in the first place are highly engaged and invested players. They are the hardcore player base. When an update like this eventually goes live, there are suddenly tens of thousands of more casual players with all vastly unique playstyles interacting with these changes, giving Jagex a whole host of new data. Take myself as an example. Sure, I am highly invested with the game and I have most of the endgame gear, but I'm simply not interested in playing a beta. Mainly because my understanding of the combat system isn't deep enough to truly give them feedback on if ability X should do 300 or 400% ability damage. But probably the more important reason why I don't want to invest time into a beta, just like many other people I feel like, is because things are still subject to change. Why try and figure things out that could possibly function differently in the main game if I can just wait for it all to go live and copy the new best in slot rotation? I am the average player in that sense who just enjoys combat on a more surface level, even if I'm doing endgame PVM content, where someone like Pop, Evil Lucario or the RS guy are way more interested in exploring the nitty gritty numbers of these combat changes. This new casual or broader data point is quite frankly the main reason why these nerfs happen, whether you like to agree with it or not. Like Mod Pigeon said, replying to a post on Reddit complaining about these changes, they do understand nerfs never feel good. They would absolutely love to get it spot on, 100% right on release. But truthfully, the limited amount of information they get from betas only gets them so far compared to what they get from the live game. This isn't just a Jagex or gaming problem, as I talked to some of my friends who work in IT about this and who have worked with betas before. And they pretty much told me that you can only get so much information from a beta before having to go to a live version of the product, where the beta is more about getting the majority of things right, fixing the major bugs, and then tweaking the final bits in the live version, which, in my opinion, Jagex did a pretty good job on. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I think there is actually a deeper reason for why people feel so terrible about these nerfs, and to make my point, I want to look at the Sanctum of Rebirth drop rates. The drop rates of the Sanctum of Rebirth bossing encounter were actually nerfed to bring up the prices of the tier 95 magic dual wield weapons, because let's be honest here, whilst it's nice that you can get a tier 95 wanted orb for less than 200 mil put together, or at decently low drop rates, some of the best weapons in the game shouldn't run that cheap and should be a bit more aspirational to get. The reason why they nerfed it now is because they introduced new invention components coming from these weapons that can give you the equilibrium aura in perk form that really benefits necromancy. And they thought it'd be a good idea to nerf the drop rates by 50% in both normal and hard mode respectively, to allow the prices to recover even further and make these drops a bit more aspirational. I feel like that it's actually a great change, and I think many people would probably agree with me. Hell, as of me making this video, the price have already doubled, so it clearly works. However, it is a change that comes nearly 2 years too late. And I think that is exactly the issue that many people have with nerfs. They are super inconsistent. If we knew that Jagex would consistently nerf overpowered just broken content within the first 1 or 2 weeks after release, as it should be in my opinion, most people would probably be more fine with it. But sadly, we have seen many cases like the Sanctum, the Fractured Staff of Armadale, the God Dodger 3 rewards, or even the recently changed Tumicant robes. They are nerfed, and quite heavily, years after their release. This makes it hard for us players to trust the process over at the Jagex offices and brings the players in a very awkward situation. When something new releases, and it's clearly very powerful, will Jagex actually nerf it within the first week or two, or will it remain in the game? Do you try it out now in the overpowered state, or do you wait for it to be in a more realistic window, especially if you need to purchase a new weapon or armor set? At the end of the day, history has told us that eventually everything that we all know is overpowered is going to get nerfed at some point. We just don't know when that will happen. Creating more consistency in when Jagex will nerf something broken will also create more understanding from the players towards it. Sure, you will never get rid of the early bird bonus. The idea that if you do something on release and it is overpowered, you have a benefit over people who have to deal with the nerf version. But at least it will feel a lot less terrible, and let's be honest, we all know that this is the case. At the end of the day, if something needs nerfing, they need to do it. I trust the developers to know what is best balancing wise for the long-term health of the game, and them hurting our feelings is unfortunately a part of it. There is a good reason why in old school RuneScape major nerfs are not being pulled, because the developers know that the players would never agree to them. Yet Jagex needs to start being more consistent with these nerfs, as it just feels so terrible when after 2 years of abusing overpowered content that everyone knows is overpowered, it just gets nerfed. So, are the nerfs to the original combat styles as bad as people make them out to be? No, not at all. They just feel exponentially worse because everywhere you looked, people had a meltdown over it. But the most important factor is Jagex's inconsistency with nerfs that create a feeling of unfairness towards these types of changes, resulting in upsetting people further than what is actually expected. So my message to Jagex is very simple. If something is broken, nerf it. But nerf it straight away. Because if we as the community can tell in the first week it's overpowered, you should be able to do so as well. And whilst it sucks that we got these nerfs after just a week, it is actually the right thing to do, but it should be the right thing to do every single time and not 2 years after the fact. That's just my 2 cents though. What do you think about all of this? Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and my name's Chevalric, and I really hope that my voice wasn't too bad as I'm a bit ill, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.